We kick things off in a fantasy world which has the labyrinth city Merhats. Inside this city is a hospital known as Eris, where our hero, Satu Shiki, is working as a healer. He was reincarnated in this world from his own planet, so he was hoping to do a good job here. But it turns out that he was fired from the job by a cute, curvy girl whose name is Eris. As a matter of fact, it was so bad that she ordered Shiki never to show his face ever again. We do not know yet if this was because he did shady things to her due to his intrusive thoughts. So it's time for a brief flashback within the Eris hospital. We see our hero using a healing spell to remove poison from a cute girl's hands. He gets done with the treatment and then he asks the girl to pay his fee of 400 zeni, which is the currency of this world. This is too much for the girl, so she uses her curvy body to appeal to him. Her equipment had broken down during her last adventure, so she's a little low on cash. However, Shiki cannot let her get away with this again, otherwise he will be fired by Eris. This puts him in a tough spot as the hospital's hired healer. This girl is shown to be a regular adventurer, and she always comes back to the Eris hospital to heal her injuries after she visits the labyrinth. She clearly knows how to play with Shiki, because she gives him a wink and promises not to tell Eris about it. She rubs her body up against our hero, and his intrusive thoughts start to take over in hyperspeed. This is a dangerous situation for Shiki, because he has to face the temptation of twin hills covered by a thin piece of cloth. He tries his best to fight against his shady intentions. But then the girl tells him that he can touch and rub her twin hills if he wants. Her technique is highly effective and starting to show signs of impact as Shiki closes his eyes but puts out his hand to touch what most men may have touched before. He tries to act innocent by saying the Eris hospital is going through some trouble with cash, so his neck may be on the line if he gives another discount without the boss's permission. Of course, he can't fight his intrusive thoughts any longer, so he gives in to temptation and loses the battle against the cute girl's curvy hills. Shiki says that it can't be helped now, so he is willing to go down to 200 zeni, which is more than enough to please his patient. She happily allows him to do unspeakable things to her hills. So our hero turns over to the dark side and states how she is always able to get a discount using this secret technique. However, with one set of twin hills being violated, another set enters the room, and it happens to belong to Eris, who wants to know exactly what Shiki is doing. Our hero is caught in the act, so there's nothing he can do for now, but the girl makes the most of this chance and simply runs away while she can. Shiki can't believe that she has betrayed him, but now he has to deal with the wrath of Eris, who is fuming with rage. She tells our hero that she has warned him time and again regarding discounts, especially when they are given without her permission. Shiki relies on his secret rules of success, but the first rule is to smile and laugh when in trouble. That obviously doesn't work on Eris, and she demands to know why he was touching what he should not have been touching. Shiki thinks of his second rule, which is to give a reasonable explanation for his actions. So he says that the girl's hills were injured, which was why he decided to check them in detail. However, this tactic fails as well, as Eris says Shiki could have cured the girl's hills even if he had used healing magic. There was no need for him to be doing lewd things. And on top of that, Eris was actually watching the whole thing right from the start. There is no other option left for Shiki, so he relies on rule number 3, which is to beg for mercy. He bows down to Eris and says sorry for being a shady boy, but she isn't budging at all. She mentions how Shiki had told her that he wanted to work in the hospital no matter what. However, our hero tells us that the only reason he said that to her was because he wanted to see her curvy body every day. Despite Eris warning Shiki against the discount situation, he has continued to do it again and again. To make matters worse, he does shady things with the patients, just like he was doing to the girl as well. Till now, Eris had allowed it because his healing magic was amazing, but she has had enough of his antics now. This explains why she fires him and tells him never to show his face ever again. Now, our hero is jobless and homeless in another world, with nowhere to go. Shiki has found himself in a bad situation, so he goes to a bar to drink his sorrows away. That isn't helping either, because our hero needs to find a new job quickly. It's not going to be easy, since clinics will not accept anyone with the kind of qualifications he has. This is where he realizes that Eris was a nice girl, as she was open enough to give him a chance. He recalls that Eris had all his luggage packed when she had fired him, which means that she did not do this on an impulse. Eris had actually planned to kick him out a while ago, and Shiki believes it has to do with an incident from the previous day. Our hero had bumped into Eris while she was taking a bath, and carelessly fell on top of her, which led to him touching things that he should not be touching. Shiki can still feel the softness in his hands, but he can't let his intrusive thoughts take over just yet. After all, his goal is to build a harem since he is in another world. It's at this point when he hears someone call out his name from behind. It's the cute girl with the curvy hills, and she asks Shiki why he's drinking at this time of day. He reveals that he got fired from the hospital, and it shocks the girl, but she can only smile and offer her condolences. The girl tries to act calm, so she averts her eyes, but our hero knows that she's aware of the reason for him getting fired. He also remembers another important thing, so he asks her for her name. The girl is shocked that Shiki does not even know her name, especially after all the lewd things she's let him do to her. However, Shiki says that they have only spoken to each other when she would come over to the hospital to get treated by him. He obviously doesn't want any misunderstandings to be repeated, so he urges the girl not to say such things in public. She figures he's right, but Shiki wants to know how she knows his name. Anyway, since the both of them have only been flirting over discounts, the girl decides to reveal her name as Luluka, also known as Lulu. Shiki says he won't forget her name, but that's only because Lulu is the shady girl who has caused him to lose his job. Come to think of it, Shiki realizes that he did give Lulu the discount, but he didn't get to violate her hills the way he wanted to. On top of that, she didn't even pay for the treatment, but he can't exactly discuss these things in public with her. He doesn't know what he's going to do now that he doesn't have a job, but then Lulu comes up with an idea for him. She suggests that Shiki should try his hand at becoming an adventurer. It's not a bad idea, but our hero reminds Lulu that he can only use healing magic. She agrees that it might be hard for him to do this alone, so she advises him to join a party since it will make his life much easier. Shiki decides to ask Lulu if he can join her party, but it's not going to go his way at all. Lulu acts shy and mentions that her party has a very uptight girl, so it won't be possible. Shiki wants to push for a spot in this party, because he had heard earlier from Lulu that it only has cute girls in it. Unfortunately, he will have to dream on because they're not letting him join. It makes sense as well, because if Shiki was in Lulu's place, then even he would not allow someone like him to join such a party. For all we know, our hero would probably end up peeping on the girls while they take a bath or something along those lines. Shiki asks Lulu if a novice adventurer like him would be able to find partners. It pains him to say this, but he doesn't have any friends over here since he's from another world. He hopes to use this emotional tactic to get Lulu to listen, but she's too busy enjoying her meal, so it makes him feel even worse. He asks her if she's even listening to what he's saying, but she says that he'll be able to form a party in no time because his healing powers are out of this world. She wishes him all the best, and continues to eat her food. With that, Shiki has become a loner once again. Our hero walks through the streets of the city, and it makes him recall the first time he had entered this world. We learn that he was stabbed by a slasher and reincarnated in this world as a result of it. At first, he did not know if he was living inside a dream, a game, or maybe even the afterlife. Despite not understanding anything at all, he still walked around the streets with no mission in mind. Luckily for him, he had come across Eris, who had taken him in with open arms. Our hero felt great joy when she offered him a job at her hospital, because this was as good as it could get for him. However, he ended up doing unspeakable things to her patients and even her as well, so Shiki messed it all up. Suddenly, he notices something odd with the crowd in front of him, so he decides to check it out. We learn that it's a slave market, which is why people are getting excited. Shiki tells us that there are many ways to be bought as a slave in this world, but it all boils down to two things in the end. The master will need to provide the basic necessities to the slave, and in return, the slave would do whatever the master would ask from them without any hesitation. If the slave doesn't obey their master, then they will be forced to do so by a magic seal known as a slave crest. Shiki gets an idea and thinks of entering the labyrinth with a bunch of slaves to make his job a lot easier. He puts his mind to work and realizes that it might be the best possible idea for someone like him. The slaves will have to obey him because of the slave crest, so there is no chance of him getting betrayed inside the labyrinth, which is anyway filled with monsters. It's definitely a better choice than having to rely on total strangers. So it looks like Shiki is going to buy him some nice slaves, but he does have a major problem. He's low on cash because he's only got around 60,000 zeni in hand right now. If he is to consider even the cheapest slave, then it's going to cost him at least 200,000 zeni. It's a good plan, but our hero can't risk taking on any debts just to buy one slave. He gives up on this tactic, but then he notices a slave girl with some injuries. She's quite badly hurt, but the thing is that she's a dark elf girl. It looks like she was attacked by a monster and isn't going to last very long, which explains why her price is as low as 50,000 zeni. It's a bargain deal, which means that Shiki can afford her. Of course, he's not a generous man or anything, but he does need a slave, and this girl can be of great use to him. Before he moves ahead, he decides to assess the girl's skills to see if she would be a good fit for his party. He uses his appraisal skills and takes a good look at the elf girl. Her name is shown to be Yule, and she possesses the skill of dagger arts. This makes Shiki happy, because even though Yule is a child, she can easily become an adventurer if she trains her skills. On top of that, the Dark Elves are a nimble race, so Yule can prove to be useful to Shiki. Our hero tells the slave trader that he wants to buy the Dark Elf girl, But even the slave trader is shocked to hear this. He mentions that Yule's eyes are damaged and it would cost Shiki a lot of money to get her healed. Of course, Shiki doesn't care about any of this, so he transfers the money and tells the slave trader to make the contract. It is mentioned that refunds are not allowed. And then Yule is given to Shiki as his new slave. He takes a look at her as she bows down to him and gives an introduction. Shiki offers his hand to her, but she is not able to see it, which means that he has his task cut out for him. He decides to take Yule to the inn first. But the problem is that the place they're going to has a bath in each room which is used for shady acts. The fact that Shiki has brought a girl wrapped in bandages also doesn't do him any favors, but he doesn't have any choice. He simply tells the reception girls that he's actually just going to stay with Yule, but he already has a bad reputation. Now, the two of them enter their room, and then Shiki asks Yule if she's tired of walking. He tells her it's time for bed, and then Yule bows down to him again. She thanks our hero for buying her and promises to serve him to the best of her abilities. This gives Shiki a warm feeling inside. But he remembers that he's the hero, not the villain, so he can't let his intrusive thoughts take over. He tells himself to calm down because he is not so far gone as a human being. After all, Yule is a child, so he needs to take care of her almost like a big brother. He tells Yule that she does not have to serve him in the normal way that a slave would serve her master. As a matter of fact, he needs to get the healing started first. Yule is confused upon hearing this. Our hero says that he's going to fix Yule right away, and he unleashes his ultimate healing move to remove all of her injuries. With that, the bandages go away and Yule looks good as new. Shiki says that the treatment is over and then he hands Yule a mirror so that she can see herself. It's a very emotional moment for the elf girl, as she can finally see herself with her own eyes. She needs a moment to calm down, but Shiki is happy that Yule is back to normal again. She takes a look at Shiki and asks him if he is her master, so he decides to act cool in front of her. He asks her if he's handsome, but what happens next is something even he did not expect. Yule hugs him with gratitude and says that he's very handsome and cool, even going on to say that he's the coolest boy in this world. Of course, Shiki has to be neutral, but even he is overcome with emotion. Yule thanks him for fixing her face and body, and she says that she really wants to show her gratitude to him. Obviously, this is not what Shiki has bought her for, so he reminds Yule that he is not a shady man. Even then, Yule acts cute and says that she wants to service him in the best way she can. Shiki figures it's time to tell her the truth, so he reveals that he bought Yule because he wants her to dive into the labyrinth with him. Since he is going to become an adventurer, he will need the elf girl to support him in his journey. Yule feels shy and says that she doesn't know how to be of use to him here since she only has dagger skills. Shiki tells her it's alright, and he will let her eat all she wants for the next 2 days. Then he will train her skills and he'll keep healing her to make sure the process becomes faster. The elf girl is ready to serve her master, so she says that she will always fight by his side, even if it means risking her own life. He tells her that they will go to the labyrinth and conquer it, so Yule says she's looking forward to it. Our hero is shocked that such a young girl is excited for the labyrinth. But anyway, he has now become an adventurer in another world. Now, we fast forward to Shiki and Yule making their way to the labyrinth. Our hero tells us that the labyrinth is a scary place where monsters roam around with deadly intention. But at the same time, this is also a place where you can make a good fortune if you play your cards right. Yule is extremely happy to be visiting the labyrinth, so Shiki comments that she's like a child going to an amusement park. Of course, he feels a little guilty for taking such a sweet, young girl to a dangerous labyrinth, but maybe Yule is excited because she has faith in her own ability. This theory actually turns out to be true as Yule's dagger skills are so amazing that she's able to take down a whole army of monsters without any problems. The elf girl rushes to her master and asks him how she did. Yule has a very cute look on her face, and it makes Shiki compare her to a puppy who is waiting for her reward. Our hero puts his hand on her head and congratulates her for doing such a good job. As expected, this makes Yule very happy, but Shiki is even happier because she is much more useful to him than he could have ever imagined. As a matter of fact, Yule is able to defeat monsters from the first as well as the second floor without breaking a sweat. By the time they reach the third floor, Shiki stops assessing Yule and simply pats her on her head to show his appreciation. Having Yule on his team definitely feels like a cheat code, but since she is able to come this far without even a single scratch, it puts Shiki's role as a healer under question. He gives off a weird face which makes Yule ask him what's wrong. Our hero realizes that he can't make Yule worry, so he focuses on praising her for her services. This is more than enough to make the elf girl blush and be content with her master. After their latest mission, the team goes to grab a bite, but first, Shiki has to cash in on the bounty. He and Yule have earned 2,000 yeni just from today, and it's all thanks to the elf girl. Our hero buys a nice meal for himself and Yule, but he feels like a shameless leech because he hasn't even done anything in the labyrinth. Yule loves the food, and she has a carefree smile on her face, which at least means that she's enjoying her service as Shiki's slave. Of course, our hero is used to getting scolded by Eris, so he imagines that his curvy boss would mock him for enjoying the money his slave has made for him. He doesn't care about that anyway, because Eris doesn't even want to see his face anymore. Suddenly, he hears someone calling out his name, and it's none other than Lulu. She hilariously grabs our hero from behind and says that he is the only one who can save her. Naturally, Yule is a bit suspicious, so she asks her master who this curvy girl is. Lulu pauses after hearing the elf girl refer to Shiki as her master, so she asks him if he's gotten a slave for himself. She finds Yule extra cute, but is disgusted to see how shady Shiki is as a boy. Lulu can't believe that he prefers girls like Yule, but our hero tells her that she's got it all wrong. Now, Shiki decides to introduce the girls to each other, and he mentions how Lulu would visit him back when he was a healer at the Eris hospital. Similarly, he explains how he bought Yule as his slave, but for the purpose of fighting goblins inside the labyrinth. Now, Lulu finally understands why Shiki bought Yule as his slave, and she is amazed that such a small and adorable girl is capable of taking down so many goblin monsters. She thinks that Yule is amazing, and even asks her to join her own party if she ever comes to hate Shiki for his shady actions. After all, she does need an attack person, but Shiki asks her not to poach his own slave. As expected, Yule says that she will never hate her master, because he had healed her from some horrible injuries. She might not even have survived till now if he had not come along. Which is why the elf girl considers Shiki to be the most precious person to her in the whole world. Lulu feels bad for making Yule cry, so she tells her that it was just a joke. However, she is impressed to see no marks on Yule's body, which means that Shiki is indeed a top-class healer. Our hero takes this chance to gloat over his skills, but Lulu has a request for him, so she calls her party members over. They consist of a cute, curvy girl named Syrah, and an angry, flat girl named Fran. Syrah is shown to be sweet as she thanks Shiki for always taking care of Lulu, even if it meant doing shady things to her in exchange for a discount. Fran is shown to be a grumpy girl, who doesn't even greet Shiki when he says hello to her. He obviously gets upset and wants to give the flat girl a piece of his mind, but Lulu tells him that Fran has injured her shoulder due to a monster bite. She wants Shiki to heal Fran because she doesn't want the bite to leave a scar on her skin. Our hero tries to tell Lulu that she should not go on so many adventures if she's worried about getting scars, but then she shoves a bag of coins into his face. It's an upfront payment for the healing, and Lulu isn't even asking for a discount, so Shiki has to be fair. He heals Fran with ease, but she just walks away without even showing a hint of gratitude. Fran actually has the nerve to tell Shiki that she was not the one who asked to be healed, so it makes him want to teach her a lesson again. Our hero is well within his right to punish the shameless flat girl, but he realizes that Yule is there with him, so he needs to set a good example for her. After all, he doesn't want to ruin her mood by showing his angry side in public. Shiki asks Lulu if Fran was the uptight girl she had mentioned earlier, mainly because it's quite obvious that she doesn't like men. Lulu says yes, but also states that Fran is not as bad of a person as she shows herself to be. She decides it's time to leave with the girls, so she tells Shiki that she will come to him again if she needs any healing help. Our hero is fine with helping Syrah or Lulu, but he has no desire to help Fran again. Yule can sense some tension, so she looks up to her master, where Shiki reassures her that she doesn't need to worry about it. The next day, our hero wakes up from a horrible dream where he was mercilessly attacked by an army of flat girls. It's quite obvious that the dream has been inspired by Fran. But then Shiki notices Yule looking cute as ever. They wish each other good morning, and we can see that they are sleeping in the same bed together. Shiki doesn't want us to get the wrong idea, so he explains that it's completely fine for him to sleep next to Yule without letting his intrusive thoughts take over. It turns out that Yule wanted to sleep on the cold, hard floor because she's a slave girl. However, Shiki is not that kind of master, so he carried her to bed and lulled her to sleep, thus proving that he is not such a shady boy. He says all of this to reassure himself, but then Shiki finds himself in yet another hilarious situation. It looks like Yule wants a morning kiss, which is why she has gotten into position for one. As expected, this makes Shiki panic because he doesn't know how to react to this. The elf girl puckers up for the kiss, but Shiki knows that he can't let this happen. He tries to tell Yule that a kiss on the cheek would be fine, but her face is as red as a cherry, so he fears that he might embarrass her. Shiki knows that he can severely affect Yule's confidence if he openly rejects her, but at the same time, he can't give in to his intrusive thoughts. Tensions run high as our hero is at a total loss, but then he sees tears coming out of Yule's eyes, so he pats her on the head instead. She is confused by his actions, so he tells her that she needs to get a little bigger for such things. Till then he wants his slave girl to eat, sleep, and work in moderation. He realizes that Yule was probably trying to comfort him after what happened with Fran the previous day. Of course, if the elf girl was of age, then he would have happily done lewd things with her. As expected, Yule gets upset and asks her master if her body is not enough for him. He explains that it's nothing like that, and the only reason he isn't unleashing the beast from within is because Yule is still a child. He does mention that in a few years, she will be a charming young lady, so maybe they can think about such things when the time comes. Yule luckily gets what he means, and she promises to do her best to be as charming as possible. Shiki breathes a sigh of relief because he has been able to control himself while also not hurting his slave girl's feelings. This is the true mark of a mature master. And he also realizes that Yule really likes him, so he should do his best not to disappoint her. At the same time, he has no intention to give up on his dream to create a harem, because that is his ultimate fantasy. For now though, he must put aside his shady thoughts and take Yule for breakfast. After they're done with their meal, they head over to the labyrinth, and that's when Shiki realizes that he doesn't have any weapons on him. He obviously has Yule, so it's not like he needs them, and he figures that he'd probably just get in the way if he tried fighting by her side. Even then, it's better to have a weapon just for his own safety because one can never get too comfortable. Shiki pulls out a sandwich from his food basket as his elf girl takes down all the monsters on their floor. She happily announces that she's done her job, and then Shiki asks her if she'd like to have lunch. Yule takes a bite of her sandwich and she nibbles on it like a cute puppy. However, once she's done with the sandwich, the elf girl starts to taste her master's fingers, which makes him a bit conscious. It's a rather intense session, but luckily, Yule reveals that the dressing was spicy. Shiki is glad that the dressing was the issue, because he wouldn't have been able to explain this behavior in any other way. All of a sudden, Yule becomes alert as she can sense someone coming in from the deeper part of the labyrinth. Shiki takes a look, and he notices a couple of men limping towards him, asking for help. One of these men appears to be injured, so our hero rushes to them to check if they are all right. The injured man is shown to have lost his foot to a giant ant monster, so his buddy asks Shiki to at least close the wound in order to prevent any further bleeding. Shiki now knows that the giant ant is a beast that will be found in the layers ahead of where he currently is. The task at hand right now is to cure the wound of the footless man, so Shiki springs into action. He uses his ultimate healing spell, just like he'd done with Yule, and to everyone's shock and surprise, the injured man has got his foot back. Not just that, he can move it freely as well, so it's definitely his lucky day. Of course, our hero never likes to do anything for free, so he tries to become greedy by asking for a fair compensation. He's about to ask the men for the cash, but then his elf girl looks at him with dreamy eyes. This makes Shiki conscious, because now he'll come across as shady if he asks for money. He realizes that he must become an honorable master for Yule, so he decides to leave the men alone. The cured man thanks Shiki for saving him, and he is about to pay him for his kindness, but Shiki simply says that he does not need his money. Instead, he asks the man to treasure his life, and then he walks away with Yule in order to look like a cool hero. Shiki feels really good about himself and feels that his character arc is going to become much better now that he has done a good deed. However, the men grab him from behind and say that they need to repay him somehow for what he's done. They say that they should at least buy Shiki a drink, so it confuses our hero. He is clueless as to why these men followed after him instead of just standing there and being amazed by his selfless acts. That's when he realizes that all of them are going the same way since they are exiting the labyrinth. Shiki is then taken to a pub, and even though he feels that there's no benefit in hanging out with these men, he soon takes back his words when they raise a toast together. We learn that the injured man's name is 8 and the other man's name is Geyser, and the both of them are quite nice once you get to know them a bit better. Shiki thanks them for treating Yule as well, but they say that it's nothing compared to what Shiki did for them. Geyser is a bit curious because Shiki should be wanted by every hospital out there if he has such amazing healing powers. That's when our hero explains he's not a priest, so it would be better if 8 and Geyser don't mention his powers to anyone else. 8 puts some thought into this, and then he suggests Shiki to open up his own clinic over here, especially since he's mostly just sitting at the bar all day. Geyser thinks it's a good idea, because Shiki can set up a mobile clinic at the bar and treat adventurers. This is a great option for our hero, but he doesn't know if he'll be allowed to do it. 8 tells him to ask the master of the bar, and believes that it should be fine because Shiki will end up attracting more customers to the bar. There's no harm in trying, so Shiki goes to the bar master and presents his idea. The master immediately approves it, which is amazing for our hero. Without further ado, he proceeds to set up his mobile clinic at the bar, and he even gets a signboard. Shiki thinks back to the time he was unemployed and had to depend on Yule to get his money. But now, he is living a good life thanks to his clinic. He is doing so well that he has been able to buy a mace for his own protection. Shiki's life sounds like a dream come true, but there is one issue that's still bothering him. That one thing happens to be the sleeping beast inside his body, which has been created by his intrusive thoughts. This can be seen in full flow one morning when he wakes up with a light shining like no other from his elephant zone. Naturally, Yule is curious as to what this is, but we don't get to see how our hero handled that situation. Instead, We move to a scene where Lulu and Yule are going to sell a whole bunch of slimes to the guild, and our hero is following after them. It looks like Shiki has told Lulu that the slimes can be used for cooking, but that isn't the truth at all. The true use of the slime jelly is something else. But it's too late for our hero to reveal the truth to Lulu now. The girls are going to sell all the jelly, which means that Shiki will not be able to use it for what he needs. He doesn't lose hope just yet and hopes to catch at least one of them. And as luck would have it, one of the jelly pieces falls off the basket. Shiki activates his super speed to pick up the jelly in the nick of time, and he's glad to have been able to get at least one piece. However, he realizes that the girls have gone ahead of him, so he needs to catch up to them now. At this very moment, he bumps into someone and says sorry for the encounter. However, he can feel something nice and soft in his hands, and this is a feeling he has felt before. It turns out to be Eris and her twin hills that our hero is holding on to. As expected, they are both shocked to see each other after such a long time. It's time to move back time for a bit, so we see Yule holding on to her master with a smile on her face. We learn that Shiki was having a man's talk with Eight and Geyser while they were in the restroom, and he has come up with a solution to tackle his inner beast. Now that he has a solution, he tells Yule that it's time to go the labyrinth, and they need to head straight towards the 7th floor. This is because our hero is going to hunt some slimes. However, in a hilarious turn of events, Shiki is easily defeated by a slime, and he lies on the floor with disbelief while Yule tries to wake him up. Our hero had no idea that he wasn't even strong enough to take down a slime. But the truth is that he was tricked by these small monsters. Slimes can spit out their mucus, which is very slippery, and that's why Shiki fell on his head and passed out. The plan was to get jelly from these slimes without Yule knowing what they're for, but that clearly is a failed effort. The elf girl worries for her master, but Shiki allows her to laugh at his pitiful state. Instead, she says sorry for not being able to protect him when he needed it. Obviously, Shiki tells her that she's done her job well and it's his own fault for letting such a thing happen. However, he gets hurt once again, and it makes his slave girl very upset. Shiki heals himself and tells Yule that he's fine, so there's no need for her to cry. Despite this, Yule says that she does not have the right to have her head patted by her master. As she says this, our hero notices that her ears have dropped, which means that they move as per the elf girl's emotion. Shiki tells Yule to cheer up because he always wants her to have a smile on her face. He plays with her ears and it makes her feel better, so Shiki can breathe a sigh of relief. Her ears go back up again, but Shiki wonders if Yule is like this because of her living as a slave. He feels that she might need human warmth, which is why him patting her head almost feels like some kind of medicine. Shiki uses his brains and figures that Yule only thinks of herself as a battle slave. Her worth is calculated by her ability to protect her master, which is why his encounter with the slime might have broken her confidence. After all, this is her only connection to Shiki as of right now. Our hero realizes that he needs to say the right words to his slave girl, so he tells Yule that he will always be with her no matter what. This puts a smile on her face, and she glows up with sincere joy. The elf girl promises to try harder next time, and her master says that he will be counting on her for it. This seems to help Yule get her confidence again. And then Shiki decides that they should call it quits for today. Yule is fine with this, but our hero knows that he still has to achieve his goal, which is to obtain the slime jelly. Later in the day, Lulu meets Shiki and asks him if they can go to the labyrinth together the next day. She acts cute and holds our hero close to her curvy body, but this confuses him because she did reject him from joining her party. On top of that, he has no desire to work with the flat, shameless Fran, but Lulu explains that Sierra and Fran are taking a break for now, so it will be just her. Lulu then cuddles with Yule and says that even she is looking forward to it, although the elf girl feels like Lulu is hurting her. Shiki tells her that he's currently in the middle of the 7th floor, so if she's fine hunting slimes with him, then it should be fine. The talk of slimes makes Lulu curious, so Shiki tries to entice her by saying these monsters have been in a lot of demand of late, especially because of the items that they drop. Lulu does not give an instant answer, so our hero fears that his lies have been found out. Maybe Yule did not notice this, but Lulu should have more experience, so it could be possible that she knows what slimes can do to a man. However, Lulu simply smiles and tells Shiki that she will join him for the hunt tomorrow. This is good news for our hero, but then she also asks if she can stay with him for the night. Of course, Shiki says yes, but he wonders if Lulu also has intrusive thoughts for him. The curvy girl is happy to hear this, but she simply says good night and leaves the room. Obviously, this confuses Shiki because he thought that Lulu wanted to share the same room with him. Our hero figures that Lulu was teasing him on purpose, but before he can curse her, Yule tells him that they should also go to sleep now. At least he has his slave girl with him, so Shiki comes up with a plan. We see Lulu outside the room, and she reveals that she did just play a prank on our hero because she loves to see his face when she teases him. After all, This is the same boy who would give her discounts in exchange for shady acts. Suddenly, she hears lewd noises coming from the room, and she starts to wonder what's going on. Lulu can hear Yule asking her master how it feels, and he says it's amazing. The elf girl gets a little tired, so Shiki tells her that she doesn't need to force herself to do this. It's okay for Yule to stop, but she doesn't want to because she wants to serve her master. Lulu has heard enough, so she charges into the room, ready to confront Shiki for his shady acts. However, all she can see is our hero getting a shoulder massage from Yule. It's time for Shiki to return the favor, so he asks Lulu what's the matter. He asks if something has caught her interest, but she is speechless. He goes on to say that his slave girl is doing her best to give him a massage. It makes Lulu blush out of embarrassment. Now that Shiki has the upper hand, he questions Lulu and her intrusive thoughts, so she runs away from the room feeling shy. Our hero is pleased that he's been able to get back at the curvy girl for her teasing session earlier. Yule now asks her master if she can continue with the massage, so he says yes. After all, it's not like he has any shady intentions for her. The sounds continue to flow from the room, and Lulu can still hear them, so it's safe to say that she does not have a very pleasant night. The next day, Lulu joins our hero and his slave girl in the labyrinth. She can see that Shiki and Yule are very close, especially when he hugs her after defeating monsters. Lulu can't hold her curiosity any longer, so she asks our hero if he does such things with the elf girl regularly. He says yes and asks if there's any problem with it. The curvy girl understands that he's giving the slave girl a reward for her efforts, but it's making her feel left out. Lulu goes on to strike a shady pose in order to tempt Shiki, but he now has experience with her, so he fights back his intrusive thoughts. After all, she could just be teasing him again to get revenge for last night. Yule finds this strange, so she asks Lulu if she also wants to be patted on the head by her master. This leads to an awkward situation, and Lulu starts looking at Shiki with dreamy eyes. Tensions run high, and it looks like Lulu might just act on her intentions, but then she changes the topic and suggests rushing towards the 7th floor for the slimes. This is not something that Shiki can just overlook because Lulu was genuinely giving him eyes of passion. He knows that she has allowed him to do unspeakable things to her, but that was obviously for discounts. Now that there is something real, it might be that Lulu actually likes Shiki. However, he comes back to his senses and says that it's just Lulu behaving like she normally would, so she's probably just teasing him again. Now, the team runs into a bunch of slime monsters, so the girls get to work and do a splendid job. They get covered in some slime though, so Shiki has to stay strong once again. It was a rather easy task, so Shiki is pleased that he has such skilled fighters with him. We learn that a slime's body disappears after it is defeated, but it does leave behind a prop item which is exactly what our hero is after. This is called slime jelly, and it will be the savior for Shiki and his little elephant. Yule takes a bunch of these jelly items and states that they're elastic and soft. Of course, Shiki would not want her to spend too much time with the jelly, but then she suggests that he should try it as well. Shiki plays it off as a joke, but deep down, his shady mind knows exactly what he's going to do with this jelly. Now, we come back to the present time where we see Ruru suggesting that they should sell the jelly items. All of this finally makes sense, because Shiki's plan has now been laid to waste. He does not want the girls to sell all of the jelly items because he will not have anything left to use for his own elephant later on. This is exactly why he jumped for his life when one of the jelly items fell from the basket. However, this is also the exact same time he bumps into Eris again, and to make matters worse, he grabs here where no man should ever grab a woman. Of course, the both of them are shocked to see each other again, but our hero can't help himself, so he tries to feel the softness just a bit more. As expected, he gets slapped by Eris for being a creep and he says sorry for his actions. Anyway, it's a bit surprising to see his former boss over here. And that too, it seems like she's just come out of a bar. Shiki doesn't understand this, because Eris is usually at the hospital at this hour. He asks her if something has happened, but Eris says that it does not concern him and she walks away from the scene. It's a puzzling interaction for our hero, but then Yule and Lulu come back for him and mention that he needs to keep up. He joins his girls again, but he's still suspicious about what Eris said to him. He figures that he should go back soon, and then he thanks Lulu for all her help today. The curvy girl hugs Shiki closely and tells him that they should do this some other time as well. Naturally, this makes Yule a bit jealous and our hero very awkward. The curvy girl leaves the scene and Shiki comments on how odd she is, but then Yule holds onto his arm. He asks her if something's the matter, but she says it's nothing even though she knows she wants her master all to herself. Now, Shiki and Yule go to the bar and catch up with Geyser and Nate for a drink. They are impressed to learn that our hero is already at the 7th floor, but he gives the credit to Yule and her impressive dagger skills. The men tell him that he's not exactly a bad fighter and Yule can only battle the monsters with freedom because she knows that her master is standing right behind her. She is a bit cheerful now after hearing this, but she wants to know why everyone is celebrating so much right now. Shiki tells her that it is to enjoy the success of beating all the slimes today. The elf girl does not understand why beating slimes is such a big deal, but before Shiki can say anything, 8 tells him that he should not bring up the topic they had discussed earlier, especially not in front of his slave girl. That's when we learn that the slime jelly is some kind of relief device which will help our hero maintain his image in front of Yule. After all, he can't afford to give her the wrong impression if she were ever to catch him in the middle of something unspeakable. However, our hero suddenly loses his senses and taps into his intrusive thoughts once again when he sees the maids of this bar. They are all cute and curvy, so he can't get his shady mind off them. Yule notices this and she wonders if she would look better if she also wore a maid costume. She even gets the incentive to do so, because her master says that he would prefer to see her in such an outfit. 8 says that Shiki should buy Yule a maid skirt because he needs to reward her for all her hard work. Our hero agrees with 8 because he knows how much Yule would like to dress up for him. Yule blushes and feels shy because she does not know if she would look good in a maid skirt. Shiki drinks one more jug of beer and he tells his slave girl that he is going to buy her the skirt no matter what. He wants to thank her properly for all the monsters she's been defeating, and on top of that, he also tells the elf girl that she should be more confident in herself. He also mentions that Yule is quite cute the way she is right now, and it boosts her morale. She gains energy and promises her master that she will do her best. But it doesn't look like Shiki is doing too well himself. He instantly passes out and falls to the table, much to everyone's surprise. Yule panics upon seeing this, but Geyser and 8 reassure her that Shiki has just gone to sleep. The next day, our hero curses himself for drinking too much because he has run out of money. This is a problem because Shiki did just promise to buy his slave girl a maid skirt. With no other option, he heads to the labyrinth with her once again and they go straight to the 7th floor. Shiki puts his brain to work and realizes that the monster with the most valuable drop item would be the King of Slimes, who is basically just a giant slime monster. If he defeats it, there's a small chance that the King of Slimes will drop the Slime's crown, which is a popular collector's item. As a matter of fact, it's so popular that it could fetch a price as high as 200,000 zeni. It's a very tempting thought for Shiki, but he does not know if he should risk Yule over here. Sure, she can defeat tons of tiny slime monsters, but the King of Slimes is a whole other ball game. Shiki figures it's too risky, because he does not want the slime boss to hurt Yule and damage her in front of him. Right ahead of Shiki and Yule is the boss room, and the elf girl that she's ready to enter it at any time if it's for her master's sake. She thinks it's just a big slime at the end of the day, but Shiki says that it would not be wise for them to tackle such a boss monster just by themselves. Yule does not argue with her master and comes back to the bar clinic with him. Shiki knows that it would be a great way to earn a lot of cash, especially since his earnings from the clinic are not that high now. However, he's making enough to save for Yule's skirt, so he's happy with himself. Yule asks Shiki if she can go fix her hair for a bit and he allows her to do so. She rushes away and it makes our hero a bit suspicious. But before he can think about it any further, Lulu comes to him and asks him to heal her. Shiki thanks Lulu for her loyalty, but he also mentions that he's expecting her to pay a fair price. However, Lulu doesn't seem too intent on paying her cash to our hero, and says that she wants him to have a look at her injury first. She says this with shady eyes, so what exactly does she have planned for Shiki? The curvy girl just wants him to use his healing powers on her for free in exchange for allowing him to do unspeakable things to her twin hills. She says that she doesn't have a very big injury, but our hero is not interested in the size of the wound. He says that his fee will depend on the kind of spell he will use to cure the injury. Lulu thinks that Shiki is being very cold to her, but of course, our hero is only doing this to trigger a negotiation play between him and Lulu. He also wants to know what Lulu truly feels about him because the cute look on her face back at the labyrinth was not something that she could fake. It's too genuine for a girl like her to act out, so Shiki needs to know if she truly wants him to violate her curvy body. Obviously, he has 2 other things in mind, so he plans to use the negotiation play as an excuse to do as much as he can with these 2 things. He also recalls the last time where he used his healing magic on Lulu but could not act on his intrusive thoughts properly as Elise had walked in on his shady acts. Lulu tries to act cute again and she says that her injury really isn't as big as our hero thinks it is. She tries to give Shiki a closer look at it and our hero's intrusive thoughts start to kick in again. He acts coy for now, but the curvy girl keeps pushing herself closer to him. This makes Shiki wonder if Lulu actually wants to get closer to him because of her own intrusive thoughts. Maybe all of this was just an excuse to come and see him, so Shiki decides there's no point in acting shy and innocent anymore. He can't help his feelings anymore, so he brings Lulu to a private spot which she then covers with the curtains. She holds his hands and brings them close to curvy heaven, but just before Shiki can make his thoughts run wild, his slave girl Yule comes back from her toilet break. She happily declares that she has returned, but what she sees is something that no girl should ever have to see. Shiki is caught in the act and he has no excuse to give his slave girl. Yule is sad and disheartened to see such a lewd act being performed in front of her, and even our hero realizes that he has messed up big time. He has let the negotiation play get the better of him, and now he has found himself in a tough spot with Yule. This was obviously a mistake and he needs to come up with something fast. Otherwise Yule will not be able to recover from this betrayal. After all, his slave girl might just lose her faith in him after seeing such a despicable act in front of her. In an awkward yet hilarious moment, Shiki nervously says that he is in the middle of a very tough treatment. He asks Lulu to play along by asking for her validation on the same. He even says that it's so tough that he has to go and directly touch the two sources of the pain. Our hero hopes that the curvy girl has figured what he's trying to do and he prays to God that she agrees with what he's saying. However, Lulu takes it the completely opposite way and brings her healer boy's hands closer to her twin hills. She even makes a shady face while doing this, and it makes our hero realize that he has lost the battle of deception. As a matter of fact, Lulu takes it to such a point that even someone as shady as Shiki is feeling shy about what she's making him do. Yule has been scarred for life now, and Shiki desperately tries to explain that this is not what it looks like. The slave girl can't take any more of this, so she starts crying and saying that her master has been stolen from her. She cries in extra cute fashion, so Shiki tries to console her. Lulu, on the other hand, had no idea that her actions would cause the elf girl to cry, so she says sorry for acting on her intrusive thoughts. Shiki does his best to keep Yule calm, and then he says sorry for acting like a shady creep. Lulu and Shiki now join forces in order to create the perfect cover story for their lewd acts. The curvy girl says that she was not trying to steal Yule's master away from her, but she was rather just borrowing him for a bit. Shiki goes on to say that what he was doing to Lulu is actually a secret technique called palpation. Of course, these are all lies, but Yule starts to buy into what is being told to her. Shiki sees an opening, so he says that it's a very difficult medical technique, which was why he had to get so close to Lulu. After all, he needed to be sure if there was any other kind of issue within her body. The slave girl calms down for a bit and asks if all of this is actually true. This makes Shiki happy, even though he has to copy such a basic excuse for the sake of his elf girl. It is a deception, but it's for a good cause as per what our hero is thinking. Lulu also gets the vibe of the room, so she asks Yule to take a closer look at her twin hills under Shiki's guidance. Our hero goes on to explain that there is no issue or scratch on her body because he has healed her with the art of palpation. Lulu celebrates and says that Shiki's magic is simply amazing. All of this is more than enough to finally trick Yule into thinking that her master is not a shady creep. She happily runs into Shiki's arms and hugs him because she is glad that it is not as she had imagined. Of course, both Shiki and Lulu are happy that they have managed to trick the innocent elf girl into believing their lie. Our hero tells Lulu that she doesn't need to pay him now because he has to go back home with Yule and he has already redeemed himself by touching what he had been longing to touch for so long. We move to nighttime, but Yule has not said a single word since the shady incident. Shiki notices this and wonders what she is thinking about. Our hero worries that maybe his slave girl has figured out that it was all a lie, but that does not happen to be the case. She suddenly starts saying that something hurts, so Shiki goes up to her to figure out what's going on. Yule says that her body keeps hurting, so our hero uses his healing powers on her instantly. However, his spell does not work on her and she continues to talk about how her chest is feeling tight. Yule mentions that she's been feeling this way ever since she saw her master doing unspeakable things to Lulu. That's when Shiki realizes that Yule is suffering from something that no kind of healing magic can cure. It could be anxiety or even jealousy. But then the slave girl comes up with a request for her master. She asks him to do the exact same thing with her as he was doing to Lulu. Of course, Yule thinks that it's a genuine medical technique called palpation. But Shiki knows that it's far from the truth. He envisions a future where Elise comes to visit him, but not for the kind of activities that he would like to do with her. Yule happily welcomes her into the room, but Elise takes one look at Shiki and places him under arrest for his shady acts. Not only will Shiki be placed behind bars, he will also not be allowed near Yule for 5 years. Of course, the slave girl has no idea what any of this means, but Shiki knows that it's simple justice for what he had done earlier. Luckily, the arresting part is just something that he was imagining in his head, so we're back to reality where Yule asks Shiki once again to do palpation to her. Our hero is hesitant in doing this, so Yule wonders if he wants to do this or not. Of course, he knows the reasons why he can't do such a thing in any way. It's not like he'll be able to cure Yule that way. After all, she has more of a mental block rather than anything else. But at the same time, if he rejects her now, it could be possible that Yule will never get her confidence back again. After some careful thought, Shiki makes a decision and approaches his slave girl. He raises his hands and it looks like he might just give in to his criminally intrusive thoughts. But then our hero redeems himself by grabbing Yule and holding her in his arms like a protective guardian. He asks his slave girl if she remembers what he had told her before about how he can be around her. In his mind, he is obviously thinking that he can do whatever he wants with Elise or Lulu because they are grown women who are able to make their own decisions. However, there is a line that he must never cross with someone like Yule. His only wish is for his cute slave girl to keep smiling, and he realizes that she is behaving this way because of her anxiety. His top priority should be to calm her down, which is exactly what he does when he says that he had promised to stay with her forever. He intends to keep that promise, and his words ease Yule's anxious demeanor. She asks her master that if he is giving her such kind words as a reward for her working so hard, then would he reward her even more if she continues to work hard for him? This is a bit tricky for Shiki to answer, but he knows that he has to ease Yule's mind, so he agrees to reward her if she continues to work hard. This is more than enough to calm Yule down, and she says that she is feeling fine now. With that, the slave girl goes to bed and yet another disaster is averted. Some more time passes by, but our hero is not able to get any sleep. He doesn't know if he has made the right decision by continuing to lead Yule on, so his guilt prevents him from getting any rest. He gets up to check on his slave girl, but to his surprise, she is not there. This is bad news for our hero, so he instantly steps out of the inn and looks around for Yule. She was nowhere to be found inside the inn, so the only other option is to scan the city for her. This is a worrying thought for Shiki because he has no idea where his slave girl could have gone. He asks people in the city if they have seen a dark elf girl, and one of the men points him to a place where she was seen 10 minutes ago. It turns out to be the direction of the labyrinth, and this makes Shiki wonder if Yule has gone into the labyrinth in the middle of the night simply to challenge the slime boss alone by herself. Shiki can't bear to stand the thought of what might happen to Yule, so he quickly rushes to the labyrinth to save his slave girl. However, he does not get to act like a proper hero because he struggles to hold his own against a small chicken monster. He takes cover behind one of the pillars and laments his current state. He is disappointed that he can't even beat such a small monster by himself, but this is not the time to complain, so he heals himself and tries to push his way forward. He knows that he has to stop Yule from attacking the slime boss, but on his way to the boss room, he suddenly falls to the ground after feeling a stinging sensation. Shiki has no idea why this happened, so he takes a look at his legs only to realize that one of them has been gobbled up. There's only one explanation for this, and we see it right after in the form of a giant ant monster. Things are not looking too good for our hero as he lies on the ground with the ant monster approaching him with deadly intention. Shiki knows that he has to make a run for it, but for that, he will need to heal his leg as fast as he can. He tries his best, but time is running out for him, so thinks back to all his current relationships with cute girls. Elise still hates him for his shady acts. Lulu still has not revealed her true feelings for Shiki, and above all, he can't afford to leave Yule alone like this. He uses his ultimate healing move, but it takes too much time and the giant ant monster comes up to him. Shiki braces himself and prepares for the worst. But before anything can happen, he hears a loud slash and sees that the ant has been sliced into two. He hears a voice asking him if he's alright and why he's here alone. That's when he looks up to see that his butt is ate and Geyser have come to his rescue. The men are glad to have saved Shiki in the nick of time. But he looks all messed up. Our hero explains to them that he had woken up to find Yule missing from his room, so he fears that she has gone to fight the boss slime all alone. He is clearly worried for her safety and is feeling very emotional at this time, but Geyser tells him that Yule should be at the bar around this time. This is a massive twist in the tale, and Shiki's hilarious face says it all. He is totally confused, so Geyser repeats himself once again by saying Yule should be at the bar. Shiki loses his mind and grabs Geyser by the collar while hilariously asking him if he's messing around. Geyser explains that it's the truth because our hero was a part of this conversation earlier. He had promised to buy Yule a maid costume just like the ones being worn by the cute waitresses at the bar. Since she liked the idea of wearing the maid costume, she said that she did not want to cause any trouble for her master, so she would work while he would be asleep. Even Shiki had pushed her to do her best. And it all makes sense now to our hero. 8 figures that our hero was drunk when this chat was being had, which is why he looks so lost right now. Geyser can't believe what he's hearing, but Shiki nervously laughs, which means that he actually was too drunk to even realize what his slave girl was saying. As expected, Shiki lets out a huge grunt of frustration. But he only has himself to blame. He bows down to 8 and Geyser and says sorry for causing them trouble in the labyrinth. The boys are fine with helping him out because he was the one who saved them in the first place back when 8 had his own leg cut off. They also say that booze tastes even better after doing something good, so they should head over to the bar. However, they also tell Shiki that he should change his clothes since they look very dirty and ragged. If Yule sees him like this, then she might feel bad about making her master worry. Shiki agrees with this, so he rushes back home and tries to wash his clothes. However, no matter how hard he tries, he is not able to get the stains off his shirt. He decides to hide his clothes and his injuries for the time being. But then Yule suddenly shows up in a cute maid costume. She is shocked to see her master with all his injuries, so she asks him what happened. Naturally, Shiki doesn't want his maid girl to worry, so he says that the stains and blood on his body are not his own but from the monsters he had beaten. Yule knows that he's lying to her because Geyser had told her everything about Shiki going to the labyrinth alone to find her. Our hero figures that Geyser and 8 lost the fight to Booze, which is why they opened their mouths to his maid girl. Yule feels bad about this, so she says sorry for not being prepared to help Shiki. Our hero doesn't want her to feel guilty about this, so he says that it's not her fault at all, since he is alive and well. There is no need to worry and Yule can carry on without feeling bad. The elf girl still feels bad about what has gone down, so she offers to clean her master's body from all the blood and stains. Shiki says that it's fine and he can do it himself because he does not want Yule's maid costume to get dirty. However, she says that she will simply take it off and help her master out. Of course, this is not what our hero was expecting to hear from her, so he quickly turns around and has to face a rather awkward situation. She goes on to say that she is very thankful to her master for showing his concern towards her, but the only thing on our hero's mind is to avoid letting his intrusive thoughts take over. Yule goes on to say that she was really worried for Shiki, especially after hearing what all he had done to go look for her. He is now injured because of that, so the slave girl does feel bad about it, but she is actually very happy to see how much Shiki cares for her. After all, he did just risk his life to go find her despite knowing that he would not stand a chance against the monster in the labyrinth. Yule hugs her master out of love and affection, so it makes for a very wholesome moment. This makes Shiki also realize that his efforts did not go to waste, especially now that he and Yule have become like family. They make a promise to each other not to visit the labyrinth alone ever again. A few days pass by since this incident, and it looks like our hero is getting along well with his maid girl. We see Yule dressing up into her maid outfit, and she likes it a lot. Shiki even calls her cute, which makes her feel much happier about it. Now, Yule starts working as a waitress at the bar, and it helps keep her busy throughout the day. Of course, this would keep the elf girl busy, so Shiki started worrying about her sleeping hours. He ends up going to the bar and has a word with them in order to change Yule's timings. Shiki gets his way, and with that, the whole waitress incident comes to a happy close for him. Now that Yule has started working, Shiki likes to listen to her stories about work, so it becomes like a daily routine for the both of them. One day, the topic turns out to be about a new waitress with whom Yule wishes to get along. She begins to talk about this person and we learn that she is facing some kind of financial problems. It turns out that she has some kind of clinic but she does not have enough money to make it run, which is why she had to sell her house. Seeing her in such a state made the bar people worry for her, so they ended up asking her to work with them in order to make some extra cash. Of course, this is a sad story and no one should deserve such a life. However, it looks like Shiki has heard this story before, so he asks Yule for the name of this waitress. In a shocking turn of events, we learn that this waitress is none other than Elise herself. This is exactly why our hero felt he was hearing a familiar story, and now he has no other option but to meet her again. Yule calls Elise over to her place and introduces her to Shiki as her master. As expected, the curvy babe greets her past employee with a neutral expression, and it makes things awkward for our hero. Elise says that Yule keeps singing praises about her master, so she wanted to come over and see what kind of person he is. She had actually expected to meet a saint, but it only happens to be the shady Shiki. Yule is surprised to see that Elise and her master know each other from earlier, but our hero wants to talk about something else. He clenches his fist and goes on to tell Elise that Yule told him about the issues she was facing with her clinic. We learn that the curvy babe had put her clinic on auction around a week ago, so it might be too late, but he would still like to be of use to her. Shiki tells Elise that she just needs to ask for his help and he'll do whatever would be needed from his end. Of course, this is a calculated move from his end because Elise had helped him out when he was alone in this world. However, it's not just about him wanting to be liked, as his feelings for Elise are true. What she gave him was much more than just a night's stay and a meal, so he genuinely wants to be there for her during her time of need. Elise says that she had debts even before Shiki had come along, so the fact that he gave discounts in exchange for doing unspeakable things to cute girls had angered her. On top of that, Shiki peeking in on Elise while she would bathe also set her off, but she could never run away from her problems. Shiki feels bad after hearing this, so he tries to offer a solution to Elise, but she continues to talk about her situation. It turns out that she has a little sister who is studying in the capital so that she can become a night girl. In order to make this dream of hers come true, Elise had borrowed money from some other people. This allowed her to pay for her sister's tuition fees and living expenses, which she would happily do again because the only family she has is her little sister. At the end of the day, this is Elise's problem, so she can't involve Shiki in it. Of course, our hero is not just going to stand there and watch Elise suffer, so he confirms that the clinic she has put on auction is actually her home. He asks the curvy babe how much money she has borrowed, so that he can pay off her debts with his own money. However, Elise simply smiles at him and says that she had already made her decision to sell the clinic a long time ago. She says she has come to terms with her situation and has no regrets about what she's done. With that, Elise leaves the room, but Shiki can sense that she is lying to him. There are tears in her eyes as she exits the room, so it's clear that she does have regrets. Seeing Elise cry is a rather unpleasant sight, so our hero feels guilty for not being able to help her out. Yule also tells her master that Elise had lost her parents a few years ago in an accident, so she would also like to be of help to her. The fact that she is willing to sell the clinic for her sister is a big deal, because that home is the only place where she still has memories of her parents. This should be obvious to Shiki, since Elise only has her sister as her family, but he was oblivious to this fact, which makes him feel angry with himself. Even now, it's as if he doesn't even know who Elise is. Shiki has a dejected look on his face. So Yule wants to know if something is up. He simply says that it's time for them to go to the labyrinth, because he has a plan. The labyrinth is known for being a place filled with monsters and demons, but more importantly, it is also a treasure house filled with riches. Shiki believes that these riches will help him win Elise's clinic back and also pay off whatever debts are due from her. He tells Yule that this will be their new mission, and she is ready to help him on this mission. It's time for a flashback, because when he recalls the time he was reincarnated into this world, Shiki can only think about Elise showing him kindness. As a matter of fact, it's the only reason why he was able to live here in the first place. We see Shiki bowing down to Elise and begging her to let him work at her clinic. Normally, she would feel a bit suspicious about this because a strange boy has appeared out of nowhere and is now asking her for a huge favor. Despite that, Elise had only one thing on her mind, and it was the wound that was hurting our hero. We learned that it's the same wound that had come from his time on Earth where he was stabbed by a random man for no good reason. The injury had traveled with him all the way to this new life, so it makes him wonder how reincarnation really works. Elise sits next to him and says that she will use a healing spell to cure his wound. She just needs some time to focus, but Shiki still has no idea what she means by the word heal. However, he soon realizes how important such a thing is when he says the word heal, and then he automatically heals his wound. Elise is amazed to see how powerful he is because he has just used an insane amount of healing magic in front of her. We noticed that he had unleashed a massive amount of light energy even though he has just used a simple spell. This is because he had no control over his healing powers back then. This is how he ended up as a staff member in Elise's clinic and also how he started his life as a healer in another world. If it comes to why he went to such an extent to work under Elise, he reveals that he only had her curvy body in mind as he had fallen in love with her twin peaks. Our hero lets his intrusive thoughts take over once again, but then Yule brings him back to his senses by shouting out his name. She reaffirms the fact that if they want to buy Elise's clinic back from the original auction winner, then they will need to go to the labyrinth and earn as much money as they can. In order to do this, they will need to defeat as many monsters as possible, so Yule says that Shiki can leave the fighting up to her. Shiki says that he actually has a genius plan to sort the whole thing out, so his slave girl asks what it might be. He reveals that his trump card is the massive drop item from the 7th floor boss, Huge Slime. From what he has heard, the drop item is a crown, and it is very rare, so if they can collect it, then they can end up selling it as well. This should be more than enough to sort out the house for Elise. But then Yule reminds Shiki that he had told her the two of them would not be enough to defeat the slime boss. That's when our hero realizes that he had indeed said this, so his whole plan was a bit too hasty. He does admit that the two of them should not risk taking on such a dangerous boss monster, so he needs to come up with a plan for it. Shiki turns on hero mode and says that he will get more people to fight the slime boss and challenge it with his numbers. After all, anything can be achieved when humans work together towards a common goal. Even though he has just said this, Shiki also realizes that in order to hire a team of fighters, he will need to pay them for their services. Even if he has luck on his side and they end up winning the crown, there will be too many people to split the reward with, and that will amount to almost nothing for them. Shiki sits down on the table and is under some stress because Elise's house is going under auction in just 6 days. If he has to be equipped for this, then he will need at least 600,000 Zen dollars in his pocket. It's a tough spot for him, as he knows he won't be able to make this much cash from his clinic, so he needs to try something else. Our hero even considers betting all his savings at the casino den on the outskirts of the city, but that could be a huge risk for him to take. Ewell can see that her master is worried, so she asks him if all is well. Shiki realizes that he might be pushing himself too hard right now, so it would be a good idea for him to take a break for a bit. He goes outside and Ewell says that she will get him some water to refresh his mind. As he waits outside, Shiki hears a familiar voice, so he lifts his head and sees Sarah, who is one of the girls from Lulu's party. They greet each other and Sira says that it's been a while, but our hero can only gaze at her twin peaks. His intrusive thoughts take over once again, but before he can violate Sira in his head, the grumpy girl Fran shows up and tells him not to look at Sira with shady eyes. Shiki remembers her well due to her arrogant behavior, and Fran only proves this point when she threatens to set him on fire with her flame magic. This is a totally savage move from her end, so Shiki stops thinking about Sira and looks for Lulu. He can't see her anywhere, so he wonders if she is still feeling awkward about seeing him ever since their shady incident at the bar. Luckily for him, Sira chimes in and tells Fran to behave herself since she is the reason they are here today. Shiki is saved thanks to the curvy babe, but Fran says that Sira and Lulu are always blaming her for their own needs. Our hero doesn't have time to mess around, so he asks the girls what they are here for. Sira reveals that his healing powers have become quite famous in the city, and news of his abilities have been spreading everywhere. Lately, people have been talking about how he has the power to even restore a lost limb. Shiki can only nod in approval, but he knows that the men responsible for spreading this information are 8 and Geyser. They clearly can't keep a lid after booze enters their bodies, so there's not much that Shiki can do about it. He tells the girls that he would prefer not to be famous since that comes with its own set of problems. However, Sira says that Lulu has been in his care quite a few times, so it must be fate that they have met each other once more. Basically, the girls have a quest for our hero and he can sense trouble right from the looks of it. The curvy babe says that she would like Shiki to join the subjugation force, which happens to pay well for serving them. Shiki takes a look at the prize money, and it's not bad, but at the same time, it's not enough to pay for Elise's home. With no other choice, Shiki has to say no to the girls, and they have to accept his decision. Sira does ask him to let her know if he ever changes his mind because her squad is in desperate need of healers. However, this makes Shiki wonder why Sira is asking for such a favor. Guarding the surroundings of the city is supposed to be the job of knights and not adventurers. Our hero then suspects that Sira and Fran might actually have some kind of connection with the knights of the city. Now that he's curious, he tells the girls that he'll think about it. As of now, the only thing on his mind is Elise's clinic, so that takes priority for him. He needs to gather a team of adventurers to help him out on this mission, and he also needs to find a way to get their assistance for free. Fran does not like the fact that her team has been rejected by Shiki, so she tells Sira that they don't need his powers anyway. She feels that she can beat any monster without needing to be healed, so Sira is worrying about nothing at all. She does admit that Shiki has the power to restore a lost limb, but his fees are too high for normal people to afford. The flat girl even goes on to say that Shiki must be acting like a shady creep with girls who can't pay for his services. She accuses our hero of making cute girls pay with their bodies to avail his healing services, so Sira tells her that she is being very rude to him. It's a hilarious moment as Shiki feels that such an accusation is too much even for him. He does admit that his intrusive thoughts are always out of control, but he does take care not to do shady things around Yule. However, the thought of having a curvy babe like Sira pay him with her body makes him excited, so he holds Sira's hands like a suspicious fellow. Naturally, Fran does not appreciate this kind of behavior, so she gives our hero a taste of her mind. Later, Shiki comes back home to Yule, but he seems to have some new kind of hairstyle. Yule panics upon seeing him and asks what happened to his hair, but our hero can't reveal that he was attacked by the flat girl's fire moves. He simply says that he found a way to earn money, and his head blew up due to how amazing it was. The innocent Yule believes every word that her master says, which means that she now thinks having a good idea will lead the head to blow up and cause a change in the hairstyle. Of course, there's no way such a thing would happen, but Shiki has no other choice but to lie to her. Luckily, he's a healer, so he doesn't need to worry about the injuries, but for now, he wants to find 8 and act out his plan. First of all, Yule rushes to get her master a comb, and then he goes to 8 and Geyser. He tells 8 that he wants to gather all the adventurers who have lost their limbs to a giant ant monster. 8 does not get why Shiki is asking for such a thing, and Geyser asks him if he's trying to get more customers. That's when our hero calls them out for spreading the word about his healing powers even though he had asked them not to do so. He uses this as leverage and tells the boys that he has now gotten into some trouble because they could not keep their mouths shut. Of course, this is just a bluff, but it manages to get the job done as the boys promise never to mess up again. They also agree to do what Shiki is asking them for, but 8 says that the ones who have been wounded do not have the money to pay for his healing. That's when we realize that this was what our hero meant when he thought about paying with one's body. Yule also marvels at her master's genius, and then we see a whole gang of injured adventurers in front of our hero. He tells them that he will heal all of their wounds, but he will not accept money as a form of payment. Instead, he wants them to follow his orders for a whole day, and they agree to his deal. Shiki takes a look at all the men he has gathered, and they seem to fit with the battle plan he has in his mind. The warriors want to know why he has such a specific battle plan in mind. so he says that he wants to be prepared to take on the boss slime. Now, our hero and his army of adventurers make it to the 7th floor where they come up against the giant slime beast. Shiki tells his men that he's counting on them because they are up against a meat shield which can heal itself no matter how many times it falls. The warriors are ready to do anything because they have gotten their legs back, which is a huge deal. They even think that this is too good to be true, but Shiki reassures them that he's a man of his word and will take their service as his payment. Now, he hears a sweet voice from behind which asks him to remember his promise to her. It turns out to be Sira, who has also come with Fran to help him out with this mission. We learn that our hero has promised to join their subjugation force in exchange for them coming here to take down the slime boss. After all, Shiki needs a long-range attacker, so the girls make a good fit for the job. Fran maintains that the only reason she's here is to protect Sira from Shiki's intrusive thoughts, but the curvy babe tells her to mind her manners. There's simply no way for our hero to impress the flat girl, but she's here on a mission, so she decides to be done with it as soon as she can. Shiki promises that he will make Fran's grumpy face show some shameful expressions one day, but Yule snaps him out of his vengeful fantasy and informs him that the giant slime is coming for him. With that, everyone takes their position and prepares for an epic battle. An intense encounter follows, and Fran decides to take the lead with her fireball attack. She manages to land a direct hit on the slime boss and its body becomes exposed. Shiki can see the core, which means that it's the right time to strike. He calls out to Yule, so she springs into action and cuts through the slime monster's body extensions. It's a tough fight, but our hero is glad to have been able to gather a team of adventurers to get this job done. After all, he couldn't afford to hire a team, so he used his healing powers to get a team to work for him. He is also glad to have cracked a deal with the cute and curvy Sira, although Fran has come along as an extra. It truly is like a win-win scenario, as our hero has managed to succeed by paying with his own body. The main condition is that all the drops made by the slime boss will belong to him, and after the beast is defeated, we can see the rare slime crown falling to the ground. Yule is excited to see this crown, so she tells her master that they have done it. They've got the first one, which costs around 200,000 Zen dollars. The plan is to gather at least 5 of these by the end of the day so that Shiki can have enough cash in hand to buy Elise's house. If there is any flaw in the strategy, it is that our hero and his team are at the mercy of the number of slime bosses that can appear in one day. However, Shiki is confident in himself because he has done enough good deeds by healing so many adventurers. Today also happens to be the 7th day since he has enforced the rule where he cannot release anything from his elephant's trunk. That's why Shiki has named this day as the Lucky 7. Of course, this is not like some massive sacrifice, but if we were to consider how shady Shiki is, then it's a big deal for him. It's a massive sense of devotion from our hero, so he hopes that God is looking at him and takes everything into consideration while rewarding him for his efforts. Since his team has done such a good job, he urges them to continue with the hunt because Elise's auction is happening the next day. Luck is all that Shiki can count on for now, but from the looks of it, he seems to be sorted. The fireballs and the ultimate healing moves continue as time continues to pass, and eventually, the day finally comes to an end. Now, we move to the day of the auction, and it looks like Elise's clinic has already found a buyer. She learns that her home has sold for a massive amount of 1.5 million Zen dollars, but the money does not matter to her at all. She becomes emotional because she has to say goodbye to the legacy of her family, but she tries to fight back the tears. Suddenly, she finds Shiki waiting for her almost in a heroic manner, so she asks him what brings him here. Our hero says that he heard the auction ended, so he asks Elise if she has decided where she wants to work. She has not made a decision just yet, but she feels like she will be able to get by for a while thanks to her earnings from the clinic. Now, Shiki decides to do the big reveal, so he brings out a piece of paper and asks Elise to look at it. She is a bit confused by this behavior, but then she notices a symbol on the paper which states that it is a proof of ownership of her clinic. This is when our hero declares that he has won the auction, so he is the rightful owner of her clinic now. Elise is at a loss for words, and this is exactly what Shiki wanted to see. He feels very proud of himself and starts a fantasy where Elise falls in love with him. After all, he got the rare items, then he got the clinic, and now he should get the girl as well. Naturally, Shiki feels that Elise is going to run into his arms and show her gratitude with her curvy body. This means that our hero has paid off his debt to Elise and can also start his harem with her and Yule. Now, Shiki opens up his arms and expects Elise to run into them, but he is met with a rather harsh reaction. Elise doesn't say thanks or anything, but she rather asks Shiki how he was able to do this, especially since he was broke the other day. It causes a rather awkward moment for our hero as he is just standing there with his arms wide open like a fool. He does not know how to react to Elise, and wonders why she is not happy with him. Elise realizes that she's being ungrateful, so she walks away and says sorry for acting weird with Shiki. This leads our hero to wonder if Elise hates him so much that she won't even care about such a big sacrifice. He then believes that she could be frustrated at him because of how quickly he was able to accumulate all this cash. After all, the curvy babe had put in so much work and still could not pay off her debts, while Shiki managed to do it in effectively one day. Our hero figures that Elise needs to be alone for a while, so he lets Het get some space. He comes back home to see Yule fast asleep in bed, and he thinks of another reward to give her since she worked so hard today. He also remembers that he had dirtied his clothes the one day he had gone to the labyrinth all by himself. Since he has a new set of clothes now, it is a good time to throw the stained ones away. Shiki picks them up and is ready to get rid of them as he walks towards the public trash can, which is behind the inn. Just as he is about to throw his clothes away, he hears a voice calling out to him, and it is none other than Elise. She can see that the clothes in our hero's hands are stained with blood, so she thinks that he has hurt himself while trying to get her the clinic. Elise reveals that she had assumed Shiki had just come across some magical tools which were of high value, but for him to take so much damage for her is a very big deal. Of course, this is not the truth, because Shiki had done this for Yule and not for Elise. However, he chooses not to reveal this to the curvy babe because he realizes that she has misunderstood the situation. While it is true that Shiki has done something amazing for Elise, he still had an army of adventurers keeping him safe, so he did not risk his life in the way that Elise is assuming. Keeping this in mind, our hero figures that it would be better to let her believe this lie because her feelings of affection towards him have increased. Now, Elise asks Shiki why he would do such a thing for her, so he replies by saying he wanted to repay her kindness. As expected, this blows Elise away and she has tears in her eyes once again. She calls Shiki a fool, but that is only because she is happy with him. Of course, his shady intentions come out and he feels that this is the right time to strike. Shiki says that he wants to turn over a new leaf with Elise, especially because of how he had been with her when he was working at the clinic. He states that he now knows his actions were childish and irresponsible, especially since he did not know how much Elise was suffering at the time. He considers himself to be part of the reason why she lost her clinic, which is why he has made sure to win it back for her as well. He then bends the knee for Elise and presents the ownership document to her. Shiki asks Elise if she would be so kind as to take her clinic back from him and feels like he's nailed it as a hero. Now, it's time for Elise to tell the truth about how she feels for Shiki, so she reveals that she had seen glimpses of her father in him when she first saw his healing powers. After all, her father was also a healer, so to see Shiki display his soft side made her feel as if she was with someone she knew. However, since his intrusive thoughts would be on display all the time, she could never forgive him for being that way. Luckily, the curvy babe has now come to realize that Shiki is just a shady boy and not her father. Our hero knows that it's still not an excuse for doing unspeakable things to cute girls, but he decides to play along for now since Elise is clearly in the mood. Now that it is all out in the open, Elise decides to hug Shiki and she thanks him for saving her home. The curvy babe is now in our hero's arms, so he makes the most of this chance to hold her body close to his. After all, this is the best possible way for him to feel her twin peaks. Elise can figure that our hero has given into his intrusive thoughts, so she allows him to enter demon mode as he can't be helped. Shiki feels like he can finally make something happen right now. All this time, Elise would never even let him close to her, let alone touch her, but today is a different day. Shiki prays to God that Yule sleeps a bit longer in her bed because now he and Elise are going to do unspeakable things with each other. Our hero decides to risk it all and he leans in for a kiss to kick off his new romance. However, it's at this very moment where all his dreams come crashing down on him. He and Elise get interrupted by two drunk men who are on their way either to the bar or from the bar. What matters is that they call out our hero for getting romantic with the curvy babe. As expected, these men are none other than Eight and Geyser, both of whom tease Shiki and say that he should not get too excited around Elise. What's worse is that they also reveal how Shiki was able to pay for the clinic. They blurt out how he sold the slime boss crowns to get the cash and even ask him to invite them the next time he plans such a mission. After all, they need to hold the front line while he just keeps healing them from the back. Eight and Geyser leave after causing enough damage to leave Shiki scared for life. Our hero is speechless, and we can see that Elise is definitely not blushing anymore. She asks him if he actually did end up selling the slime boss crowns for money and also whether he did all this while hiding behind the backs of others. Shiki tries to play it off as a harmless joke, but the look on Elise's face says a whole other story, so he immediately drops his head to the ground and says sorry for the terrible misunderstanding. Now that he has been exposed, he has no other option but to spit out the truth, otherwise he will be doomed. He goes on to say that his dirty clothes have nothing to do with the curvy babe and all he did was take advantage of the situation to grow her feelings of affection towards him. He is awaiting the worst possible punishment that can be inflicted upon him. But Elise simply says that all his apologies were for nothing. It's not because she's upset with him, but rather because he has nothing to say sorry for. Shiki doesn't quite get this, so he asks Elise if she has lost so much faith in him that she does not even expect him to apologize for his actions. He also asks the curvy babe if she does not want to have anything to do with him ever again. However, to his shock and surprise, Elise offers him her hand and says that she gets it because he had done all of this out of consideration for her. At the end of the day, Shiki put in his best efforts to make this happen, and it was all for her sake. If he had not put in the effort to gather a team and defeat the slime bosses, then Elise would not have her clinic again. This actually leads to a romantic moment between the both of them, which is not born out of deception or intrusive thoughts. Shiki is pleased to see how Elise is behaving, so he asks her to head back home with him. This is because Yule must be waiting for them and he doesn't want to make her impatient. After that, they can also go to their clinic once again. It looks like Shiki has done the right thing for now, but will he act shady with Elise yet again? Also, if Elise is now on his team, then how is Yule going to feel about it? Most importantly, where is Lulu in the middle of this whole harem situation? Like, share, and subscribe if you liked this video. Hit the bell icon to get notified when I upload part 3. See you soon.